Hello. So what I want to do today is I want to show you how to go through 3A0, which is an introduction to parametric modeling. So what is parametric modeling? In this exercise, we're going to learn about parametric modeling and the implement design intent. And so parametric modeling allows you to create a family of similar parts, and we're going to use variables to do that. So I know you haven't been in class here to kind of see what we're talking about here, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to do a more sophisticated way to do implement design. So for example, we're going to look at a T-slot framing rail. These are the type of framing rails that are used in robotics. And they can come in different sizes, different lengths, different widths, different T-slot opening widths here, openings. And what we want to be able to do is every time we want to use a different framing rail. We don't want to have to start from scratch and make a brand new model. What we want to be able to do is we want to make a base model, then change a few parameters and variables, actually is what we're going to call them, and that'll then make all the various different kinds of framing rails that we need. So that's what parametric modeling is. It allows you to not just dimension a length, a quantity. It allows you to actually make a variable that you can then update and your whole design will update. And this is different from some other 3D modeling softwares where there are no hard dimensions. It tends to be sort of a more surface modeling, tends to be more for an artistic concept type of development. In parametric modeling, we're always applying dimensions, we're applying constraints, and that allows us to do updates and be more sophisticated in our design. So the parametric modeling allows us to create a family of similar parts. It allows us to apply a relationship. For example, maybe my design intent is that the height always has to be twice the width, and I can implement that in my dimensioning. And so that will allow me to always have this design intent implemented in my design. Okay, so we're going to be recreating this T-slot framing rail. The intent here is to create a single size, a base model, and then use parametric modeling, which is really just adding variables into your design so that then we can quickly resize it. To begin this activity, we're going to create a new Onshape document in your Unit 3 folder, and that's what I've got going on here. So let me go back here to where I am. I'm going to click on my Unit 3 folder, and your Unit 3 folder should look like mine. It should just be empty. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to create some variables. Let me just scroll down this document a little bit here. So this is a drawing of the T-slot framing rail. This is what the cross-section looks like. And then, of course, this is the length. In the note, it says the cross-sectional shape is square, and then we're going to use a material called aluminum 6061. So rather than putting in actual numbers for this cross-sectional area, as we've always done in the past, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in variables, and then I'm going to assign dimensions to variables. So it seems like a lot of work up front, and it is. It is more work up front, not just in how much time it takes to do it, but it's also in terms of you thinking about how you want to design something. But in the end, it allows you a lot more flexibility, and it will save you time. So I want this width. This is going to be a 1 by 1 square, but rather than putting in 1, I'm going to call it width. I'm going to make it a variable of width equal to 1. We have a T-slot width, which is the gap here between these arrow corners. We have a small fillet, a large fillet. This is what I'm going to call the material thickness here, and the material, so these are going to be the same, the material thickness. We have a center diameter, and we have a center square width. And then there's the length overall of the framing rail. So what I decided to do was, because I do want to update my design, these are going to be my variables, and these are going to be the quantities that I'm going to change when I make my updated design. So the width, we're going to start with an initial value of 1. The T-slot width, I have a center diameter, a length, and a small fillet. I'm going to make these quantities here are going to be dependent on these other quantities, my independent dimensions. So the independent dimensions are the dimensions I control, and the dependent measurements are dependent upon the values of the independent measurements. So when I looked at these T-slot framing rails, I went into McMaster Carr. I looked at the different dimensions, and this is what I decided to do. And it's going to allow me to update my design very quickly. All right, so when I want to make variables, I'm not just going to add numbers to my dimensions. I first make variables, and then I'm going to apply the variable to the dimension. So I'm going to create variables for the following independent measures. That's all these ones here. The variable tool is only accessible when you're not in a sketch. So you can't be in a sketch and make a variable. You can access a variable, but you can't make a variable. The variables must be at the top of your feature list. So remember, this is what your feature list looks like. And they have to come up at the very top here before the sketch. Just a basic quality about, or a basic quality, but a basic feature of Onshape and all of these 3D modeling softwares is you can have access to things that you've created before, but you don't have access to anything created afterwards. So if I were to put my length after the sketch, I wouldn't have access to it. I have to create it first. The variable names have to be a single string, so no spaces. You learn that in your computer science class. So I can't put T space slot space width. I'm going to do these underscores here because it has to be a single string. And the dependent measurements, so these ones here are dependent upon the independent measurements, I'm not going to give them a variable name. All right, so let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is we're going to start by making all 5 of these independent measurements. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to create a document. I'm going to call this 3A0 Intro to Parametric Modeling, and I'm going to create this. And again, before I even do my sketch, I'm going to make my variables. Okie dokes. So this is what my ribbon is looking like. I know it's here underneath the planes, and I have to scroll down, and I'm going to find my variable. If you can't find it in your ribbon here, you can just type in variable and it'll find it for you. All right, so this pop-up shows up. I'm going to assign a measurement. It's going to be a length. The name is going to be width, and it's going to be 1 inch. And I'm going to click OK. And there, now you can see it showed up in my feature tree. I know the next one is going to be the T, and remember your underscores, slot width. And what did I say that was going to be? That was going to be 0.256. So it's going to be 0.256. And I created the second one. The third one was going to be center diameter 0.205. Center underscore diameter 0.205. Click OK. The next one was going to be the length, which is 12 inches. And this one's going to be 12. And the last one was going to be small fillet, which is 0.03. And again, remember your underscores. 0.03. There we go. So over here in my feature tree, I can see that I have all 5 of my dimensions are already created. And notice each dimension is actually identified with a hashtag to begin with. All right, now I'm going to make my sketch. So I'm going to do my sketch on my front plane. And I'm going to type in the letter N, and that'll push it around here to the front. All right, so this is what this looks like. I'm going to move over here now. I'm going to first make the outer square. I'm going to make the inner square, and I'm going to make the center diameter, and then I'm going to make one arrow and pattern it. So I'm going to start over here with the large square, which I'm going to use the width on. So over here with the square, I'm going to use a center point rectangle. I'm going to use the Alt key. If I press down the Alt key and I pull out, it'll make it a square for me. If not, you can just use the rectangle and it will, you can then apply the dimensions. I'm just going to press enter. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to quit out of this rectangle. I'm going to double click on this, and I don't want this to be a dimension. I want it to be a variable. I'm going to start to type in the word width, and you can see that there my width is, my variables is identified for me. I click on that, I press enter, And there it is. So you can see here that it says here fx, a little function. That tells me that this here is a function. All right, let me zoom in here a little bit. All right, I want to create the little circle here in the center as well. So the circle in the center, let's press enter. Let's go edit that. That was actually going to be an independent variable as well. It's going to be the center diameter. I start to type in center, and everything with a variable with a C shows up for me, center diameter. I press enter, and there it is. All right, the next one is I'm going to do this central square with the center square width. You can see it has no underscores here, so this one's going to be a dependent variable, and that's going to be the center diameter times 2. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Again, my center point rectangle, I'm going to hold down my Alt key as I make my rectangle, and I press enter. Let's go ahead and dimension that. And that's going to be the center diameter. So I pull that up and then multiply by 2, and I press enter. And there we go. So I have the initial part. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to make a single arrow, and then I'm going to eventually do a circular pattern. All right, so to make this single arrow, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a line here that's going to go through the center, a construction line. I'm going to make 1/2 of the arrow. I'm going to mirror it over the construction line, and that'll be a little bit faster for me. All right, so I'm going to go to line and construction, and from the center to the corner, I'm going to make a construction line. There we go. Okay, now I want to make my lines. I'm going to take off oops. Okay, let me click out of that, Control Z, get out of that. There we go. All right, now I just want to make a line. I'm just going to make a general line here. I'm going to go down vertical. I'm going to go over, and I'm going to come in this way here. And that's it. Oops. Let me click out of this. There we go. Let me back out of that. All right, so it looks something like half the arrow. If you did not make that these two here were parallel, these two should be parallel. So let's go over to our constraints. You're going to find your parallel constraint, and I'm going to make these two parallel. There we go. Okie doke. I'm first going to make it without the fillets, and then I'm going to add the fillets. Okay, so I have that the distance here, this gap between these two arrows is the T-slot width. Because I'm only, there's going to be another arrow over here. This distance to the central axis is going to be half the T-slot width. So I'm going to dimension that. The distance from here to here is the T-slot width divided by 2. There we go. All right, what's next? We also have, what else do we have here? I wanted that. I wanted the material thickness. Oh yes, so the material thickness here, so this material thickness here is the same as this material thickness here. And the material thickness, you can see it has no underscore, so that's not a variable, it's a dependent measurement. And that's going to be, the material thickness is the center diameter divided by 2. So let's go ahead and do it. So back to my dimension tool. Now this distance here is going to be the material thickness, and that has to be the center diameter divided by 2. I press that in. Okie doke. Let's actually mirror this over. I'm going to get out of my dimension tool. It'll make the measurement a little bit easier. You're going to find your mirror tool. And again, my ribbon's looking really extended here, so I can find my mirror quickly. If you can't find your mirror quickly, you can go to the search tools and find it. Now, when we select this tool, it prompts us on what we need to do. I'm going to select the mirror line. That's what it wants me to do first. And then it says select the entities to be mirrored. And these are the 3 little segments I want mirrored. And there it shows up. Perfect. Now, if I go back to my drawing, I can see that the distance between this segment and this segment is the material thickness. And again, the material thickness is center diameter divided by 2. Okay, so back to the dimension. this is going to be the center diameter divided by 2. There. Now, everything should be black. If you have anything that is blue, that means that you have not completely dimensioned. There's something that's left undimensioned. All right, so everything's black, which means everything's dimensioned. I can see that everything here is a little fx in front of it. Everything here is a function. Now, what I'm going to do is, to make this object, I'm going to first extrude the central part here, which is just a square with a hole. Then I'm going to extrude separately from the exact same sketch. I'm going to extrude one arrow. So these are going to be two separate extrusions, and because they're two separate extrusions, they're actually considered two separate features in my feature tree. Because it's going to be separate, it's going to allow me to think of this arrow as separate from the central square area, and it's going to allow me to do a rotational pattern. All right, so let's first extrude the central part here, and it's going to be a distance of L. So I'm going to finish my sketch. Here, I can put it at a bit of an angle here if you want. I can do Shift 7. There we go. All right, so I'm going to do an extrusion, just this center part here. And it's actually going to be 12 inches, but I want to make it in as a function, so I'm going to do length. I type in just L, my length shows up, and I click OK. Oops, and there it is. Okay, whew. If I do Shift 7 again, it goes into the center. Now it's really long. Remember when we use a sketch for some type of feature, the sketch is grayed out, but I want to reuse that sketch. So I'm going to hover over my grayed sketch. You can see this eyeball crossed out shows up. If I click on that, now I'm no longer hiding the sketch and it's still there. So there's my original sketch. Now I'm going to extrude the little arrow as a separate extrusion. So back to the extrusion. Click on the arrow. I still want it to extrude the entire length of L. And click OK. And there it is. I'll do Shift 7 to put it in the center. I can click on the front, and you can see the whole thing has been extruded. Perfect. Now what I want to do is remember, and I can actually rename this if I want to rename this. I can just call this the arrow. Right? So I want the arrow, even though it's still one part, I want just the arrow to be done in a rotational pattern. So up here on the ribbon, this is my linear pattern tool. There's a pull down menu. I'm going to find the circular pattern. Again, anytime you have trouble finding something, you can just look in your search tools. All right. So remember when we work with these softwares, we always read left to right and top to bottom. Up here at the very top, and this is really, really easy to miss, there are different types of circular patterns, and I'm going to use this little pull down menu. It's a part pattern, a feature pattern, or a face pattern. It defaults to a part pattern, but we're not patterning the part. We're going to pattern just a feature. You've got to put this in as a feature. If you miss this, it's not going to work for you. All right, the software then highlights in blue where it is logically through the sequence of things that you have to do. And it says, well, what features do you want to pattern? Well, I want to pattern just the arrow. And then it's going to ask me for the axis for the pattern. So I'm moving on to the axis. I'm going to click on just the circle because the circle has the exact same axis of rotation as the arrow. I'm going to click on that. And you can see it kind of made this error here for me, but I'm going to reapply the features. And I'm going to click OK. And there's my object. I can even turn off the sketch. And there's my object. That's great, isn't it? Oh my goodness, now I realize I forgot something. I forgot all about my fillets. So this often happens where you've done something, it's like, oh my gosh, I forgot something. That's okay. What we can do is rather than starting over, we are going to backtrack and start again. So let's go back to actually the very first extrude. And what I'm going to do, this here is the rollback bar. When I look at my feature tree is actually somewhat similar, almost like a book that's being written. Right now I'm at the end of my book, and this is what it looks like. But what I want to do is I want to go back to that first extrude, I would actually want to go back to this arrow. I want to go back to before the circular pattern was done. So I'm going to grab my rollback bar, move it up. And now what it is if you think again of this as being a book, I'm not at the end of my book yet. I'm at the part before I get to my circular pattern. So this part is still here. It's still part of the book. It's still in the feature tree. I'm just not there yet. So I'm back to this point here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my fillets. I have small fillets. Let me see if I can, I don't know if I can make this any bigger. Nope, that's as big as it gets. The small fillet is going to be applied 5 times to these little points on the arrows at each end here, and the point at the very tip. And then we're going to do the large fillet over here. So I want to apply this before I pattern it because I want the fillet to be part of the pattern. I don't want to have to apply the fillets manually all the time. So I could apply the fillet in the sketch, or you can choose to apply the fillet to the 3D object, which is going to be my choice here. So I'm going to click on the fillet here. This radius here, can you please type this in? This is going to be the small fillet. So I'm going to start by typing it in. And so everything that I'm going to click on now is going to be a small fillet. And what do I want to fillet? Well, I want to fillet this edge. Notice I want to show you this. Notice this highlights the whole top. I do not highlight a face. I want just the edge. So the edge, see, it's just a line that's being filleted. This edge is being filleted, and that edge is being filleted. I'm going to move this around a little bit. It's a little wonky. There we go. I want now the bottom of the little arrow edge here and this bottom here. So there should be 5 arrows here. All right. If you make a mistake, and let's say you click on this face. Oh my goodness, that was wrong. Do you see how it makes this part here? This is wrong. Then here in the list of entities to fillet, you can just erase it from here. You don't have to start over. If I click on the front and I look here, I should have these little edges here are filleted off, these 5 edges. This is correct. The radius should indeed be the small fillet, and I click OK. So now I have my arrow and I have a fillet, but now I need to fillet these corners in here. And I'm going to do that as well before I apply my circular pattern. So I'm going to go back to the fillet tool. These are going to be the large fillets. I need to access these. There we go. So this isn't going to be this is going to be the small fillet. So the small fillet times 2. And I'm going to grab this edge. See, it's a much bigger fillet. And this edge here. Notice I'm just grabbing those edges. I'm not grabbing faces. And I'm going to click OK. And now when I look front on, this is what it looks like. And that's what yours should look like too. Okay, over here now to my feature tree. If I now take my rollback bar, and now I'm going to include my pattern, see what happens is I have filleted this one here, but the pattern did not include the arrows with the fillets. But no worries, I can update that right now. So I'm going to go to my circular pattern. I'm going to double click on that. And in terms of the features to pattern, I don't want to just pattern the arrow. I also want to pattern the fillet 1 and fillet 2. So now these 3 features are all going to be patterned. And I'm going to click OK. And there it is. It's all updated for me. All right. So even though I forgot something, it was easy for me to use the rollback bar and then just to update things. Okay. Back to this. The material should be 6061. So what you're going to go over here, let's actually rename this as well. You're going to rename, this is our T-slot framing rail. And I'm going to right click on the part. Let me move this up here a little bit so you can see it. I'm going to right click on my part. I'm going to assign a material. This is what that looks like. Nothing's been selected so far. Select that box. Make sure you're in that box. Start to type in the word aluminum. And you'll scroll, and you should find aluminum 6061. and press OK. Now, it's a pity, but Onshape does not update the look of a material of something just when you've updated it. That's okay. All right, you're going to select the object. That selects the entire object. Come over here to the, I'm in the lower right, over here, display mass properties. Click over here. And it should be 0.638 pounds. If you've done it correctly, it should be 0.638 pounds. All right, that's good. Now, the whole purpose of doing the variables was this was a 1x1 T-slot framing rail. But what if I wanted a 1.5 by 1.5? Right? So this is what we did. We renamed it, we assigned the material, and we checked that the mass was actually 0.638. Now we're going to test that your part resizes correctly. I'm going to update all of my variables, and the new mass, it should change, should be 0.643 because the shape has changed. So the overall shape is functionally the same, but I'm making a family of objects. So the width is now going to be 1.5. So now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go up to my dimensions, my variables. I'm going to double click on it to open it up, and I'm going to make it 1.5 and press enter and enter. And now it's 1.5. The T-slot width is now 0.320. So double click on the T-slot width, 0.320, press enter, and it's been updated. The center diameter is 0.262. Double click on center diameter, and it's 0.262. Update. There we go. The length is now going to be 6 inches, and the small fillet is going to be 0.04. So the length is going to be 6 inches, and the small fillet is going to be 0.04. There we go. Okay, so if we've done everything correctly, the new mass should be 0.643. So let's go here. Hopefully we've done it all correctly. Click, select it, go to the mass properties, 0.643. There you go. If something is incorrect, I would say if something's incorrect, the most common mistake is go back to your sketch, right? Hit it in the front so you can see it. Is you need to actually double click on these, each of the dimensions, and make sure that you've entered in the dimension correctly. A common mistake is to, let's say, so this dimension is supposed to be 0.16, is people will just type in the number instead of the variable. So make sure these are all variables. So again, you double click on them, make sure the variable is correct. That's the most common mistake. All right, thank you very much.